I'm Jennie Taylor Martin, a director here at Edgar Cayce's A.R.E. Today I'm interviewing Don Carroll. Don's the author of Sacred Geometry and Spiritual Symbolism, The Blueprint for Creation. Don, it's nice to have you with us today.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me.
Don, I understand it took you 10 years to research the information in your book. Did you have any idea it would take you a decade to complete it?
Yeah, 10 years, absolutely not. I mean, it was an incredible journey, well worth the 10 years because, you know, one thing led to another, and so much of it was truly understanding and grasping it, and it took on a life of its own, but it was so fascinating and so all-enveloping. One thing led to another with it. So it was an incredible journey that I greatly enjoyed, and hopefully people that share it will enjoy the journey as much as I have.
What originally got you started on your research?
It was actually two aspects that I was researching. One was from the ancient mysteries, the ancient schools of mystery, the Pythagoreans, and some of their concepts of triangular formats of mysteries and secrets of the universe, as they put it, so to speak, and the Judaic Kabbalists, who also had a triangular format for the mysteries of the universe. And I started pursuing those and finding, because in each one they had, in the Pythagoreans, the Tetractys, they had the 10 Pythagorean commas that they felt that if you understood this, it really opened up the universe and the meaning of the universe for you. And the Judaic Kabbalists had the same concept, only they used the 4 Hebrew letters of God, Yahweh, in a format of those letters in 10 in that triangle, with the same kind of meaning that God was in everything and everything was in God, that Hermetic philosophy of as above, so below, that there is a unity and oneness. And it made me think that, well, these ancient traditions of the triangle and that concept of Trinity go through so many cultures, and I began to wonder, what about the 10 Commandments? You know, we picture Moses coming down from the mountain, and he had the 2 tables, actually in the King James Version, the 2 tables of the 10 Commandments. And we've all seen, you know, the movie and Charlton Heston coming down the mountain with them, and rectangular or maybe rounded, and I was wondering, what if they were triangular shaped? And that was one of my first starts because of 2 triangular tables, because it actually, the word lua in Hebrew that they use for those tablets translates as table. And it also translates as a second translation of it of house of the soul. And thinking of that, these same kind of 10 commandments, and that the 10 mysteries and the triangles of those 2 other mystery schools, that it seems so appropriate. And I researched to see whether in anywhere they describe the shape of those 10 commandments, and they do not. So I theorized that they could well have been triangular shaped. And it becomes so elegant in symbolism, because with 2 triangular tablets or tables, if you put one of those over the top of the other, as they said they kept them in the Ark of the Covenant, you would get a 6-pointed star, which is very significant for the Judaic tradition of the Magen David. But even prior to that Magen David, Star of David, or Seal of Solomon, it's called sometimes, it was known as the Creator Star. And you would get that with those shaped tablets or tables. And what better meaning of house of the soul, particularly with what they represent. They're the laws of how to act with God and how to act with humankind, bringing that heaven and earth together, that Creator Star. And the other aspect was a Cayce reading that caught my attention. In 1935, he had, when they were asking him questions about the Great Pyramid and some of the temples at a period of time where he said they were being built around the 10,500 BC era, he said the unit of measurement they used was 27.5 inches. And that caught my attention. That is so specific. I mean, this isn't a daily horoscope kind of thing. This is extremely specific information. So, and I thought, well, this would be easy to check. And those aspects took me on such a journey, because the results you get using a 27.5-inch unit of measurement in the Great Pyramid are hugely significant for the culture, not putting it on something in the 20th or 21st century, but for the Egyptian culture as the numerical results you get. And then, of course, ancient measurements were all done from body proportions, and they had all cultures had a great tradition. Think about it today, we still talk about a foot in measurement, and came from the foot, just as we measure horses by hands, a 16 or 14 hand horse. If people go to a fabric store and to get a yard of fabric, the center of the chest out, it's all body proportions. And actually, Da Vinci's Vitruvian Man is that beautiful drawing he has is exactly about those body proportions and the use of them. And it was named after Vitruvius, a Roman engineer and architect of about 50 BC, who wrote a 10-volume series, and in it he said, building classical or sacred holy buildings, one should use body proportions, because since the body was divinely created, what better way to mirror your buildings than from the divine proportions of the body in that. So then I pursued why 27.5 inches. We know the hand, we know the foot, we know the yard. And as I researched it, I found 27.5 inches is the length of the spine. And wow. The average length of the spine is 27.9 inches, so it's within a 2% difference, and I found that incredible and so perfect if you were going to build sacred buildings or sites of initiation. It's very straightforward in Eastern traditions of our life force, our God force, the Kundalini, that coiled serpent as it translates in Sanskrit, that rises up through our spine, through our central nervous system to give us our higher consciousness, our connection with, the God force, as they say. And for sacred sites, what better unit of measurement? And from that, I continue to follow it, and the triangles and the shapes. And actually, if you go into the early gray anatomy books used in the medical profession, they describe the spine as two pyramids sitting on top of each other. And if they were able to view it, ancient societies could see that same symbolism in the spine along with the God force symbolism of the Kundalini in the spine. And the fact that even the vertebral canal where our spinal cord goes through, the top third of it in the top third of the spine, that opening for the spinal cord itself is triangular shaped. In the center part, in the thoracic area, it goes to circular shaped, and then it goes back in the lumbar area back to a triangular opening again. I mean, the elegance and what they would be able to see, and the significance and symbolism and meaning for them, and for projecting this into their sacred sites and sites of initiation and building, is perfectly appropriate. And if you even look at, it's called the coiled serpent, if you even look at the spine itself, as you look at it, and if you put a serpent next to it, the spine is a perfect depiction of a serpent. It all fits so amazingly well, and for that process of raising one's higher self, bringing heaven and earth together.
You've talked a lot about the triangle symbol. Your book also mentions the arc. Can you tell us about that?
Oh yes, absolutely. From whence the triangle stems from, it's kind of the arc and the triangle represent what you might say in science is the wave and particle theory, where waves come into particles. And the arc represents that creative energy. Arc being part of a circle, one of the most ancient sacred geometry, spiritual symbols is called a vesica Pisces, which is basically two overlapping arcs, or two circles that overlap each other, and in that almond shape that they create, called the vesica Pisces, is considered the womb of creation, or the creative forces. And this is a wave function, so to speak, because it represents waves. And we see that and the same meaning in the vesica Pisces. And if you expand the Vesica Pisces into what's called the seed of life or flower of life, which is basically 6 petals made of Vesica Pisces of overlapping circles, which is very common in the Eastern tradition. Knowing as this place of life of creation, we find that science is also saying the universe was created by vibration, that all is vibration, these overlapping wave fronts. If you were going to put that in a spiritual symbolism of that meaning of creation, the Vesica Pisces, these arcs, these seed of life, is a perfect example of it. And incredibly, 80 years before this was being said by the scientists, in the Edgar Cayce readings, you also find this, where he said all is vibratory, that the creation of the universe, it almost sounds word for word of what the scientists are saying now, that the creation of the universe came from vibrations. And if you see these sacred traditions of all different cultures, God moved, God spoke, God breathed, this concept of these waves. And even in the Eastern tradition, the word Om, which is the word of creation that brought the universe, they're saying the same exact thing that science is saying now. And depicting it in these arcs is a perfect example of these wave fronts. And from these wave fronts you get the particles, because you see in the center of the Vesica Pisces, what is created is 2 triangles, base to base, kind of the shape of a diamond. And they're created from these. So the particle comes from the wave, just as the scientists are saying. And these spiritual philosophies of thousands of years ago understood this and put it in perfect symbolism that you would use today in science or in any tradition to explain and to show these, to understand it. As they say, a picture's worth 1,000 words, and it's very clear in their traditions they're saying the same thing.
You also found symbolism in the human DNA.
Yes, that was absolutely incredible. I was awed as I researched this and saw how these symbols, these wave and particle, these Vesica Pisces, these arcs and triangles, were not only the symbols of science, of the geometry, of the fabric of ourselves and the fabric of the universe, but spiritual traditions throughout the world use the same symbolism to explain the same thing. And as I researched this, we always see the famous Watson-Crick DNA double helix for the beginnings of life in our creation, always from the side. You know, the double helix is that ladder that's been twisted like a Twizzler along the lines, and we see it from the side. Well, I found this graphic depiction of, rather than seeing it from the side, as if you were looking down the pipe of it through the center of it. And with this double helix in that way, with these ladder rungs coming across, it creates that 6-pointed star looking down through the center of it. It's absolutely amazing. It's clear as day to see. I remember the first time I saw it, I was absolutely stunned. I think it was about 3 minutes when I realized, Don, you need to breathe. And it's just incredible, because here in the center of our DNA is that creator star, that same symbolism with that same meaning that we find in the symbolism of spiritual philosophies and in science.
What do you think is the most significant thing that you discovered?
The unity, the cosmic and the universal archetype patterns that unite the entire universe, that what would be considered uniting heaven and earth together, which is a philosophy that runs through your religions and your spiritual concepts of bringing that heaven and earth together, that we are one. There is this unity, and we can see these in these archetypal patterns that are within the universe and within ourselves. It really shows that oneness, and that these religious and spiritual philosophies and their symbolism understood this and represented it in that. And now that science is able to catch up with their technology to see these geometric patterns that they use to describe the universe and ourselves, they are one and the same. And the ability to bring heaven and earth together, it's interesting, because in geometry, one of the things that they say is impossible is squaring the circle. And the circle has always been a representation of the universe, of God consciousness, of the all. and the square quite often is the symbol of the earth. And in, quote unquote, in mathematics, it's impossible to do. But in spirituality and in the greater unity and oneness, it is possible to square that circle to bring heaven and earth together.
Don, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for being here.
And thank you very much for having me.
Sacred Geometry and Spiritual Symbolism was published by Fourth Dimension Press, an imprint of A.R.E. Press, and is available at arecatalog.com.